Hey guys, this is Tyler here. It is August 13th and I'm just going to talk to you guys about why I think you should not discuss your MGTOW preferences at work. Okay, this is especially for my European audience here, people from Eastern Europe and anywhere else in Europe or the world, of course, but this is especially important, I think, for anyone to understand. Currently, MGTOWism is still considered an alternative lifestyle or philosophy depending on the person. It's really important to understand how alternative lifestyles are viewed by the masses. Typically in the early infant stages they're not widely accepted, and it's often because of misconceptions, stereotypes, misunderstandings, or just personal biases. And I always think that it's best in the workplace to try keep romantic relationship affairs outside. Don't engage in relationships at work. That's the first thing. This is regardless. When I was working in America, I never ever pursued a relationship with someone that I worked with. I had a couple opportunities with some ladies where I could have probably pursued this, but I was like, absolutely not. There's a lot to be said in not mixing your personal and professional affairs. You can really hurt yourself in the long run. It's important though for Europeans to understand, especially Eastern Europeans, that in America we've seen a lot of females entering the workplace and getting into higher positions, mid to upper management, and likewise it's also becoming more common in Eastern Europe. One of the biggest differences though that we've had in the States and Canada is that there's a lot of strict laws in place that essentially make it so that a man could get fired very easily if they pursued any relationship matters at work. Very important to understand. In Europe, they don't really have this yet, in most of Europe. Now there are exceptions like in England and France, I believe, and some other places, but for the most part they don't have this strict legislation in place yet. But it could happen in the near future, even in Eastern Europe. This could become standard in these countries. As I said before, I think in general it's best for a guy not to mix their personal affairs with romantic affairs and just keep them separated. That's always been my philosophy, and you can't go wrong living that way. With that being said though, there's a lot of obviously guys, more and more MGTOW guys all over the world that are emerging, and they probably have some confusion or questions if they can talk about this with people at work, and generally I would say no. As I said before, this is an alternative lifestyle, and often in infant stages people are very not receptive to alternative lifestyles. We saw this with same-sex marriages and with other movements prior, that it was typically better just to keep these things private. I mean, understand obviously that a lot of the MGTOW philosophy intertwines with romantic affairs, and usually you're better off keeping these things separate. Now, as I said before, we're seeing more and more women enter into higher ranks of management, mid-management, even upper management now, and I think this is going to become more common even in Eastern Europe, like we see in US and Canada. For any reason, if legislation changes in these countries, you could be putting yourself at major risk if you start talking about these kind of things. You could risk your job. Now, to also understand on a personal level, you'll probably just have a more smooth experience if you don't bring these matters up. Now, if you have a friend or acquaintance that you hang out with outside work, it gets brought up, absolutely, you can talk about this and explain your rationale. I think if you're inquired about this at work, it's up to you. Honestly, when I was working, I worked mostly around men. I worked for a big logistics company, UPS, in the past. I didn't bring any of this stuff up, honestly. I would definitely keep most affairs related to work, especially around women. I would not bring up these kind of topics around women. Absolutely, if you're inquired about it, just simply don't say anything. You'll be best off this way. Even in countries like in Eastern Europe where you don't have strict policies, legislation that ultimately protect women in the workplace, you're still better off not bringing this matters up, because it will help you protect your job and for you not to have personal problems. There could be bad opinions formulated about you, or rumors that are spread by a woman manager about you and your lifestyle, and it could just create a very uncomfortable situation around that person or other colleagues, and you're better off often just avoiding this topic. It's also important to understand too that then when you want to draw people in, you're better off showing by example, by expression, through your work, through the quality of work, through consistency and dedication to your job. This in itself will draw people and to understand what you're doing in your life to make yourself exemplary, to show people like what makes you such a good worker or employee. And people will be drawn to this, and this is often a better way to approach it. If we look at professional sports, often the guys that become captains or become leaders on their team first do this by their performance and through their consistency in action. And this is no different when it comes to work. People can look at your actions and they can see the consistency and results. And that's often, I think, the best way. It will also keep their reputation higher for the MGTOW movement. It will make people think, okay, these people are doing something correct by their striving for excellence and for high performance, and there's something really admirable about this movement that's really important to understand here. This is the first part of my video here, and I look forward to everyone's feedback below, and thank you.